Hello, I'm Gavin Hoey, and as the weather isn't playing ball today, we're back in the studio. So today I'm going to do some smoke photography, which is one of my favourite things to photograph here in the studio. I've been doing it for a few years, and by trial and error I've kind of come up with a system that works really well. So I'm going to show you how it's done. Okay, let's start with this thing right here. This is a little table lamp. Now you might think that that is to light the smoke, and you'd kind of be right. But it's not actually to light the smoke for photography, it's purely there to light the smoke so we've got something to focus on. You'll see how this works in a minute. The actual smoke itself, well, that's coming from this little thing. This is a little incense stick that you can pick up pretty much anywhere and costs next to nothing, and that's a good source of smoke. To light the smoke itself, the actual photography part of things, I'm actually using a standard flash gun, this one right here. Now, I'm going to trigger that remotely using a little wireless remote trigger. Now, you don't have to, you can use a cabled trigger, but the most important thing is that your light source, your flash gun, is placed to the side of your incense stick. You don't want to light this by lighting it directly from the camera, because it's going to give you all sorts of problems with light hitting the background. In fact, to ensure that no light hits the background whatsoever, I've actually made these tiny little bits of card. It uses a high-tech system. It's a rubber band, so I'm just going to fit the rubber band over my flash gun like that, and then slide these little tiny bits of card underneath like that, and it acts pretty much like a barn door. So it channels the light forwards but stops the light spilling onto the background, which is bad news, or spilling into the camera lens and giving you lens flare and similar problems. Okay, speaking of backgrounds, I don't want this background. We really want a pure black background, so any bit of pure black will do. I've got my little pop-up background here that I use for portraits, but a bit of black material will be equally good. Okay, so for camera settings, because I'm working with my little wireless trigger, I can't work in any of the program modes or automatic modes anymore. So I've got to use the manual settings. So I'm going to dial my setting to manual, and I'm going to set an aperture. Having an aperture of around about f8, f11 are kind of the perfect settings. So I'm going to dial in f11 and go from there. Now, the shutter speed needs to be the same as the sync speed of my flash gun, or ever so slightly below, which is what I'm going to set. Now, my flash and my camera sync at 200th of a second, so I'm actually going to set it at 160th of a second. The thinking behind that is, occasionally, the wireless system doesn't quite work fast enough. So by dropping it down just a tiny little bit, it means that I'll get every flash to be in sync with the camera. But this isn't an exact science, it's merely a starting point. So as you're taking the pictures, have a look at them. And if you find they're looking a little bit too bright or a little bit too dark, try adjusting your aperture to be a little smaller or a little bit bigger. Because our remote flash trigger is a real basic one, we have to manually set the flash up. But it's not a major problem. So here's what we're going to do. We're first of all going to set the mode to manual, and then we're going to drop the power down to about half power. Now, it doesn't need to be on half power necessarily, but what I find is on half power it recycles the flash much faster, so you can keep taking more pictures quickly. I'm also going to change the zoom setting as well. Again, I'm trying to focus the beam of light. That's why we've got these black cards on it. I'm also going to set this up so it has a smaller zoom as well. So again, it should help to stop the light spilling onto the background or down into the lens. Okay, that's the theory. Let's get started with some pictures. Well, if you wondered whether that lamp really is going to help focusing, have a look at the difference here. This is with it off, and that's with it on. Now, instantly you can see the smoke so much clearer, and if you can see it, your camera can focus on it. Now, even with that light illuminating the smoke, don't expect your camera to pick up focus every single time. It's just not that good. But nonetheless, you should find it helps to focus more or less all the time. As you're taking pictures, it's really important to keep an eye on the back of the camera. What you're looking for is pictures of smoke where the smoke is nice and bright, but still has plenty of detail in it. You're looking for backgrounds that are pure black. Now, if you see any light on the background at all, think about changing the position of your flash gun. Similarly, if you're getting any flare on the lens, then you may need to move your flash gun or reposition your little flags here. Now, from time to time, your column of smoke will go really boring, a bit like this. When that happens, there's a couple of things you can do. You could try just giving a little waft with your hand in the general direction of the smoke. That'll suddenly make it move just a little bit gently, which is kind of good. If you're looking for a really dramatic effect, try giving a little blow. The advantage of not having this camera on a tripod means that I can find the best bits of the column of smoke and go in tight and photograph them. A tripod's okay, but it does tend to slow you down a little bit. Quite often the nicest bit of the smoke is the close-up detail, but once you've done that, you may find the more interesting shots are actually the wide ones, particularly if you include the tip of the incense stick. I tell you what, I really wish I'd have bought an incense stick that actually smells nice. Oh dear. Okay, so there we go. I've taken a load of pictures. There's bound to be some good ones in there. There certainly look to be some good ones on the back of the screen. So let's get into Photoshop and see what we can do with them.